Hello, happy Saturday. It is summer. I hear children playing in the street. I hear the hum of air conditioning units. I feel the breeze. I hear the buzz of chirping birds about. So here we are again, another summer read. I've been a little off target. It takes a while to read A Tale of Two Cities. So let's get to it. Let's read. This is book 2, chapter 12. It's called The Fellow of Delicacy. And remember, Stryver has just confessed that he to not Charles Darnay, but to Sidney Carton, that he is ready to marry. And we've got all these suitors after Lucy Manette. So let's see what happens. Mr. Stryver, having made up his mind to that magnanimous, like very generous, bestowal of good, and bestowal is to give, so this generous gift of good fortune on the doctor's daughter, resolved to make her happiness known to her before he left town for the long vacation. So Stryver feels like, I'm going to make this girl so happy. He's not worried about whether she loves him or not. She's just lucky to have him as a husband. After some mental debating of the point, he came to the conclusion that it would be as well to get all the preliminaries done with, and they could then arrange at their leisure whether he should give her his hand a week or two before Michaelmas term, or in the little Christmas vacation between it and Hilary. As to the strength of his case, he had not a doubt about it, but clearly saw his way to the verdict. He's certain that she'll accept him. He's very confident person. Argued with the jury of substantial worldly grounds, the only grounds ever worth taking into account. It was a plain case, and had not a weak spot in it. He called himself for the plaintiff. There was no getting over his evidence. The counsel of the defendant threw up his brief, and the jury did not even turn to consider. After trying it, Stryver, C.J., was satisfied that no plainer case could be. Accordingly, Mr. Stryver inaugurated the long vacation with a formal proposal to take Miss Manette to Vauxhall Gardens, that failing to Ranelagh. I don't know where those. I know I've heard of Vauxhall, but I don't know Ranelagh. That unaccountably failing too, it behooved him to present himself in Soho, and there declare his noble mind. So he's planning where he's going to propose to her. Towards Soho, therefore, Mr. Stryver shouldered his way from the Temple, while the bloom of the long vacation's infancy was still upon it. Anybody who had seen him projecting himself into Soho while he was yet on St. Dunstan's side of Temple Bar, bursting in his full-blown way along the pavement to the jostlement of all weaker people, might have seen how safe and strong he was. His way of taking him past Tellson's, and he both banking at Tellson's and knowing that Mr. Lorry was as the intimate friend of the Manettes, it entered Mr. Stryver's mind to enter the bank and reveal to Mr. Lorry the brightness of the Soho horizon. So all fancy ways of saying he's going to go into the bank and tell Mr. Lorry that he's interested in asking for Lucy's hand. So he pushed open the door with a weak rattle in his throat, stumbled down the 2 steps, got past the 2 ancient cashiers, and shouldered himself into the musty back closet where Mr. Lorry sat at great books ruled with figures, with perpendicular iron bars to his windows, as if it were ruled for figures too, and everything under the clouds were a sum. So he's described that, they used to have in the old times those bars between the people and the bankers. "Hello," said Mr. Stryver. "How do you do? I hope you're well." It was Stryver's grand peculiarity that he always seemed too big for any place or space. He was so much too big for Tellson's that old clerks in distant corners looked up with books of remonstrance, as though he squeezed them against the wall. The house itself, magnificently reading the paper quite in the far-off perspective, lowered displeased, as if the Stryver head had been butted into a responsible waistcoat. The discreet Mr. Lorry said, in a sample tone of the voice he would recommend under the circumstances, "How do you do, Mr. Stryver?" "How do you do, sir?" and shook hands. There was a peculiarity in his manner of shaking hands, always to be seen in any clerk at Tellson's who shook hands with a customer when the house pervaded the air. He shook in a self-abnegating way, as one who shook for Tellson and Company. So let's look up abnegating. I know that word, but I couldn't define it for you. So let's just look it up. Abnegating. Renounce or reject. He attempts to abnegate personal. Like, okay, so he's in his. Let's look at the word again and see how it's being used. He shook in a self-abnegating way, like self-rejecting way, as one who shook for Telson and Company. So they're always supposed to seem very humble, and we've seen that about Mr. Lorry's character. Why? No, thank you. This is a now. Is that my air conditioner or is that a frog? Do you hear it? Or a cicada? It's not a cicada. Well, look at you. You finally caught a live read. Glad. What do you think that sound is? It's very odd. Can I do anything for you, Mr. Stryver? Asked Mr. Lorry in his business character. Why, no, thank you. This is a private visit to yourself, Mr. Lorry. I've come for a private word. Oh, indeed, said Mr. Lorry, bending down his ear while his eye strayed to the house afar off. I'm going, said Mr. Stryver, leaning his arms confidentially on the desk, like he's going to tell him something. It does sound like a dog panting, but it's not a dog. It's either a mechanical sound or a tree frog. It's a strange sound. But I want it to be outside. You can see the wind is blowing. You can see a beautiful, it's summertime. We need to enjoy the summer on a Saturday. So he's kind of saying, I'm going to tell you this something confidentially. I'm going to make an offer of myself in marriage to your agreeable little friend, Miss Manette, Mr. Lorry. Oh, dear me, cried Mr. Lorry, rubbing his chin and looking at his visitor dubiously, like uncertainly. Oh, dear me, sir, repeated Stryver, looking back. Oh, dear you, sir. What may your meaning be, Mr. Lorry? My meaning, answered the man of business, is of course friendly and appreciative, and it does you the greatest credit. And in short, my meaning is everything you could desire. But really, Mr. Stryver, Mr. Lorry paused and shook his head in the oddest manner, as if he were compelled against his will to add internally, there really is so much, too much of you. So he's like a loud, boisterous, big character. Kenya, wow, that's exciting. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know that. In Kenya, someplace I would love to get. So Mr. Stryver is this large, kind of like me character, large in the sense of energy, full of himself, a little too much sometimes. And Miss Manette is so delicate and so, perfect and really a little boring to me in character, but just such a perfect person, like always thinking of her father, always thinking of others, gentle, soft, demure. And how can Stryver even imagine that a woman like this would be a good fit for him? And yet he has such little self-awareness that he thinks she should be honored to marry him. Well, said Stryver, slapping the desk with his contentious hand, opening his eyes wider and taking a long breath. If I understand you, Mr. Lorry, I'll be hanged. Like, dang it. Mr. Lorry adjusted a little his wig on both ears as a means toward an end and bit the feather of a pen. Dang it all, sir, said Stryver, staring at him. Am I not eligible? Oh dear, yes. Yes. Oh yes, you're eligible, said Mr. Lorry. If you say eligible, you are eligible. Like, am I not a single guy and a good catch? Oh, am I not prosperous? Asked Stryver. Oh, if you come to prosperous, you are prosperous, said Mr. Lorry. And advancing, like moving up. Don't I have good prospects? If you come to advancing, said Mr. Lorry, delighted to be able to make another admission. Nobody can doubt that. Then what on earth is your meaning, Mr. Lorry, demanding Stryver, perceptibly crestfallen, like it never occurred to him that he wasn't this ideal catch for Miss Lucy Manette. Were you going there now? Asked Mr. Lorry. Straight, said Stryver with a pump of his fist on the desk. Then I think I wouldn't if I was you. Why? Said Stryver. Now I'll put you in a corner, forensically shaking a forefinger at him. You're a man of business and bound to have reason. State your reason. Why wouldn't you go? Because, said Mr. Lorry, I wouldn't go on such an object without having some cause to believe that I should succeed. Dang me, cried Stryver, but this beats everything. Mr. Lorry glanced at the distant house and glanced at the angry Stryver. Here's a man of business, a man of years, a man of experience in a bank, said Stryver, and having summed up 3 leading reasons for complete success, he says there's no reason at all. Says it with his head on. Mr. Stryver remarked upon the peculiarity as if it would have been infinitely less remarkable if he had said it with his head off. When I speak of success, I speak of success with a young lady. When I speak of causes and reasons to make success probable, I speak of causes and reasons that will tell you as much with the young lady. The young lady, my good sir, said Mr. Lorry, mildly tapping the Stryver arm. The young lady. The young lady goes before all. Then you mean to tell me, Mr. Lorry, said Stryver, squaring his elbows, that it is your deliberate opinion that the young lady at present in question is a mincing fool? Not exactly so. I mean to tell you, Mr. Stryver, said Mr. Lorry, reddening, that I will hear no disrespectful word of that young lady from any lips, and that if I knew any man, which I hope I do not, whose taste was so coarse and whose temper was so overbearing that he would not restrain himself from speaking disrespectfully of that young lady at this desk, not even Tellson should prevent my giving him a piece of my mind. So Mr. Lorry has really strong protective feelings for Minette, for Lucy. The necessity of being angry in a suppressed tone had put Mr. Stryver's blood vessels into a dangerous state when it was his turn to be angry. Mr. Lorry's veins, methodical as their courses could usually be, were in no better state now it was his turn. That is what I mean to tell you, sir, said Mr. Lorry. Pray let there be no mistake about it. Hey, it's Saturday, Kelly. Why would I be working? Isn't it Saturday? Y'all have me confused. Today is the official first celebration of Juneteenth Day. See, all these crazy summer critters are out there. So why do you think Mr. Lorry thinks Mr. Stryver's not a good choice for Lucy? Very good. Then I give it you and have repeated it correctly. And all I can say of it is this, laughed Stryver with a vexed, I missed a paragraph. Mr. Stryver sucked the end of a ruler for a little while and then stood hitting a tune out of his teeth with it, which probably gave him the toothache. He broke the awkward silence by saying, there is something new to me, Mr. Lorry. You deliberately advised me not to go up to Soho and offer myself, Stryver of the King's Bench Bar. Do you ask me for my advice, Mr. Stryver? Yes, I do. Very good. Then I give it, and you have repeated it correctly. And all I can say of it is this, laughed Stryver with a vexed laugh, that this beats everything past and present and to come. Now understand me, pursued Mr. Lorry. As a man of business, I am not justified in saying anything about this matter, for as a man of business, I know nothing of it. But as an old fellow who has carried Miss Minette in his arms, who is the trusted friend of Miss Minette and of her father too, and has a great affection for them both, I have spoken. The confidence is not of my seeking, recollect. Now you think I may not be right. You came and asked me my opinion. I gave you my opinion, and you don't like my opinion, so that's on you, guy. Hey, Kelly. It's been a long time since you've been on one of my live reads. What, I suppose, Mr. Stryver, I claim to characterize for myself. And understand me, sir, said Mr. Lorry, quickly flushing again, I will not even at Tellson's, have it characterized for me by any gentleman breathing. There, I beg your pardon, said Stryver. Granted, thank you. Well, Mr. Stryver, I was about to say, it might be painful to you to find yourself mistaken. It might be painful to Dr. Minette to have the task of being explicit with you. It might be very painful to Miss Minette to have the task of being explicit with you. Ooh, I've got a skink running across my porch. Do y'all have skinks where you live? They're like little lizards, but they're fatter and uglier. Kind of like snakes with legs. Hi, whoever is the newest person Diverge 3. Hi. Skinks kind of creep me out a little bit. They never have tails. They always get their tails broken off. I don't know if birds got them or they got trapped somewhere. So Striver has come to Lori to say, I'm going to ask to marry Minette. And Lori is outraged. No, she shouldn't marry you. So now we've got to get to what he's going to say. You know the terms upon which I have the honor and happiness to stand with the family. If you please, committing you in no way, representing you in no way, I will undertake to correct my advice by the exercise of a little new observation and judgment expressly brought to bear upon it. If you should then be dissatisfied with it, you can but test its soundness for yourself. If, on the other hand, you should be satisfied with it, and it should be what it is now, it may spare all sides what is best spared. What do you say? So he's like, I'll tell you why I have a problem with it, but then you need to accept what I say. He says, okay. How long would you keep me in town? Oh, it is only a question of a few hours. I could go to Soho in the evening and come to your chambers afterwards. Then I say yes, said Stryver. I won't go up there now. I'm not so hot upon it as that comes to. I say yes, and I shall expect you to look in tonight. Good morning. So he said, let me come talk to you away from here. And he said, when? We'll do it today. Okay, I can wait a little while to go see Lucy. Then Mr. Stryver turned and burst out of the bank, causing such a concussion of air on his passage through that to stand up against it, bowing behind the two counters, required the utmost remaining strength of the two ancient clerks. Those vulnerable and feeble persons were always seen by the public in the act of bowing, and were popularly believed, when they bowed a customer out, still to keep on bowing in the empty office until they bowed another customer in. So they're very subservient at Tellson's Bank. They're like, oh, okay, bye. And then somebody new, oh, welcome. This is the tone of Tellson's. The barrister was keen upon enough to divine that the banker would not have gone so far in his expression of opinion of any less solid ground than moral certainty. Unprepared as he was for the large pill he had to swallow, he got it down. And now, said Mr. Stryver, shaking his forensic forefinger at the temple in general when it was down, my way out of this is to put you all in the wrong. It was a bit of the art of an Old Bailey tactician, in which he found great relief. You shall not put me in the wrong, young lady, said Mr. Stryver. I'll do that for you. Accordingly, when Mr. Lorry called that night, as late as 10 o'clock, Mr. Stryver, among a quantity of books and papers littered out for the purpose, seemed to have nothing less on his mind than the subject of the morning. He even showed surprise when he saw Mr. Lorry, and was altogether in an absent and preoccupied state. Well, said the good-natured emissary, after a full half-hour of bootless attempts to bring him around to the question, I've been to Soho. To Soho? Repeated Mr. Stryver coldly. Oh, to be sure. What am I thinking of? And I have no doubt, said Mr. Lorry, that I was right in the conversation we had. My opinion is confirmed, and I reiterate my advice. So he went out to talk to either Lucy or Dr. Manette, and he said, I'm still right. I wouldn't ask her to marry you unless you want to get rejected. I assure you, returned Mr. Stryver in the friendliest way, that I am sorry for it on your account, and sorry for it on the poor father's account. I know this must always be a sore subject with the family. Let us say no more about it. I don't understand you, said Mr. Lorry. I dare say not, rejoined Stryver, nodding his head in a soothing and final way. No matter. But it does matter, Mr. Lorry urged. No, it doesn't. I assure you it doesn't. Having supposed that there was sense where there is no sense, and a laudable ambition where there is not a laudable ambition, I'm well out of my mistake, and no harm is done. So he rethought it, and he thought, okay, there's something to this. I'm not going to get embarrassed. And so he's already said, I've thought about it. I'm not going to ask her. Never mind. Let's just drop it. Young women have committed similar follies often before, and have repented them in poverty and obscurity often before. In an unselfish aspect, I'm sorry that the thing is dropped, because it would have been a bad thing for me in a worldly point of view. In a selfish aspect, I'm glad that the thing has dropped, because it would have been a bad thing for me in a worldly point of view. It is hardly necessary to say I could have gained nothing by it. There is no harm at all done. I have not proposed to the young lady, and between ourselves, I am no means certain on reflection that I ever could have committed myself to that extent. Mr. Lorry, you cannot control the mincing vanities and giddiness of empty-headed girls. You must not expect to do it, or you will always be disappointed. Now, pray, say no more about it. I tell you, I regret it on account of others, but I am satisfied on my own account. So it's their loss, not mine. And I'm really very obliged to you for allowing me to sound on you and for giving me your advice. You know the young lady better than I do. You were right. It never would have done. Mr. Lorry was so taken aback that he looked quite stupidly at Mr. Stryver, shouldering him towards the door with an appearance of showering generosity, forbearance, and goodwill on his erring head. Make the best of it, my dear sir, said Stryver. Say no more about it, and thank you again for allowing me to sound you, to check out your advice. Good night. Mr. Lorry was out in the night before he knew where he was. Mr. Stryver was lying back on his sofa, winking at the ceiling. Well, that is 20 minutes, and let's see what questions. This is book 2, chapter 12. Nope, not this section. Nope, not this section. Let's see if any more of the words were in here. Infallible, indispensable, insolent. What page am I on? I'm on page 134. Oh, so we haven't even gotten to those words yet. Nope, not this section then. I'm looking in the teacher's guide, remember, as I teach. We go over words and we go over content. Yeah, laudable. Here we go. Page 134. No, that's still not the section. Here we go. So, and these are some of the words. Ostentatious we did before. So magnanimous, dubiously, crestfallen. I'm going to go through them and see if you know. You're welcome, Kelly. See if you recognize the words, and then I'm going to give you some hints. Explicit, reiterate, remorse. Those are the vocabulary words in this section. So, ostentatious. And the context clue, all that extra jewelry made Leona's outfit seem too ostentatious. That word we used last time. The choices are noisy, appropriate. So would you use the word too appropriate? I mean, that's how you look at the clues. Showy or restrained. All that extra jewelry made Leona's outfit seem too ostentatious. So write it down. Was it noisy? B, appropriate. C, showy. D, restrained. The next word, magnanimous. So the hint, the context clue, giving the proceeds of the harvest ball to the neighborhood free breakfast program was a magnanimous gesture. So they're giving money to the program and they're describing it. So it's a magnanimous, it's an adjective. So is giving money a good thing? Yes. So we're looking for a positive word. A, generous. B, belated. C, unexpected. D, thoughtless. So we know that thoughtless is negative and belated, to be late with something, is typically a negative. So the two positive words are generous and unexpected. So is giving money to a charity a generous act or an unexpected act? And so it could be both. Magnanimous. So think in terms of magna is really big. So is it A or C? I'll come back to it. Dubiously. Oh, dear me, cried Mr. Lorry, rubbing his chin and looking at his visitor dubiously. The context clue. The house-to-house salesman approached the front door dubiously, as if he expected a rebuff. Dubiously. Curiously. Possible. Boldly. Uncertainly. Fiercely. So the house-to-house salesman comes to the front door in a certain adjective way, expecting a rebuff, a refusal. So how do you come up to something when you're expecting to get turned down? Do you come at it boldly, uncertainly, fiercely, which is like boldly? So is it A, B, C, or D? Sarah Sanders, hi. Kayla Bagley, I'm glad you stopped in. Thank you so much. I'm going over vocabulary, something new I'm doing now in this book. 8, explicit. Now, this one you should know because we talk about explicit instructions or explicit content. That'll be on a warning when you go, hey, is it Caitlin? I'm glad y'all are showing up on a Saturday. So the context clue, the directions were explicit, so we had no trouble in finding our way. So is it A, unintentionally confusing, B, clear and straightforward, C, agreeable and respectful, D, doubtful but kindly? So number 8 is explicit. Is it A, unintentional, B, clear and straightforward, C, agreeable and respectful, D, doubtful but kindly? Number 9, reiterate. My opinion is confirmed and I reiterate my advice. Always, anything that starts with a is a to do it again. The judge asked the witness to reiterate the statement since it could not be heard the first time. So if you couldn't hear it the first time and the judge is asking you to reiterate it, iterate, like, what do you think it means? To reject it, to repeat it, to amplify it, make it bigger, or to quietly suggest? Is that A, B, C, or D? And finally, remorse. Although we haven't read that word yet, but I probably, since there's only one word left, I'll go ahead and do it. Afflicted by remorse for his angry words, he apologized and promised never to speak that way again. Remorse. You guys probably know the word remorse, to have remorse. Anguished regret, lighthearted joking, annoying uncertainty, feeling of relief. All right, let's go back and get the answers. Magnanimous is to be generous. Dubious is to be uncertain. Crestfallen. Did we do crestfallen? I skipped that one, I think. The pitcher was crestfallen as he walked slowly off the mound to make way for his replacement. So if you get replaced as the pitcher in a baseball field, how do you feel about that? Outspoken, carelessly dressed, excited, or depressed? So crestfallen, to be depressed. Think about fall, to be down. Explicit is clear and straightforward. Reiterate is to repeat. And remorse is to have anguished regret. So we'll keep working on our vocabulary. I think this is a really good way to learn vocabulary. Notice how this text only gives you 10 each unit. And I think that's a complaint. I have a lot of vocabulary teachers. They try and make you learn a list of 30 words, like, oh, you're going to be so brilliant. But if you don't really know, if you just put them to your short-term memory, they're not going to be words you keep. Notice how I work with the word a lot as I process through, and that's what I'm trying to model to you in building your vocabulary. Pull it out of the text of what you're reading, then find it in another context clue so that you can figure out what it means in its context. Look for if it has a negative meaning, a positive meaning. Look for its part of speech. Is it an adjective or a verb, that sort of thing, and work with it so it becomes a part of your own personal lexicon. Then I would encourage you, if you're tracking these words as we go through, try and work some of these words into your conversations this week as you go about the day or today while you're thinking about it. That's a really good way to build vocabulary. All right, so we have finished book 2, chapter 12. We're on to 13. Who's going to actually ask Miss Lucy for her hand in marriage? She's had Charles Darnay go to the father, and the father said, I won't speak for Lucy, but if she ends up liking you, I will support you. Then we have Stryver saying he wants to go, but he goes to Lori, and Lori's like, be careful. Do you have any sense that she's interested in you? And so he's like, oh, I was super confident, but maybe you're telling me she doesn't. So never mind. I don't want her. And he doesn't ask for her hand. So who's going to marry Lucy Manette? That's the big question that we're on right now. Well, I hope you're enjoying Tale of Two Cities, and I hope you're enjoying your summer. And if you've been reading along with me, you've seen cycles change, and it goes so quickly. We're going to be to October before we know it, which is when we do our reading of Victorian literature. So we'll have another one in there. I hope to do 1984 after this, and I've been asked to do Educated, which I'm fascinated with. Oh, I may end up reading that one. I have Odyssey in my mind too. I was looking at what Louisiana's reading is, and there are still some books that I don't have on there. Today is Juneteenth, the first official federally recognized celebration of it. I actually had half a day off yesterday because of Juneteenth. So I hope you are celebrating and out there being um, free and following your hearts and following your dreams and growing. Thanks for reading along with me. If you haven't already subscribed, do so. We are way down in our viewership in the summer. Kids use this for school, is what that says to me. So, and in summer, thank goodness you guys are not having to study this summer. You're out, I hope, on the water or at the beach or exercising or, but there's nothing wrong with reading because you enjoy it. So subscribe when you think about it. Ring the bell so you know when I come online. Tell your friends about it and enjoy your summer. And I will read to you next time. See ya.